We now know the precise method of narcissistic grooming that the elites have been using on a global level to take over the entire world and to control the minds of everybody on this planet. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you in depth exactly what this is, and this knowledge will give you the ability to know what is going on in the world. You will be able to know at what level you are being controlled, and most importantly, you will have the ability to completely reverse any control that the elites may have imposed upon you. So this is something that is just coming up in psychological circles. I've actually been talking about it for a long time. I haven't used this particular definition of it, the word, but it's perfect. And that is simply traumatic cognitive dissonance. All right, so cognitive dissonance, you've heard that term. Cognitive dissonance is when you're holding two contradictory beliefs. It's extreme confusion. So let me give you an example. When I was a little kid, you may have heard me give this example before. When I was 5 years old, my neighbor across the street, he had a dog named Shep, and I was over there playing with his dog, and I had two of his toys. I think there were two balls. And I showed him the balls, and he got very excited. And then I went like this. And I threw them in complete opposite directions. And I kid you not, he went like this. And he couldn't choose. And I ended up walking away. I was laughing so hard I walked away. He didn't choose. So that's cognitive dissonance. You have these two contradictory beliefs and your brain can't figure out which one to hang on to, and you're trying to hang on to both of them at the same time. So Shep wanted both of those balls right now, and he didn't know which one he needed to go get first. And if he got that one, was he going to lose the other one? I mean, you could see this going on in his doggy brain. This is what the elites are using to control, because when it becomes traumatic, then we're talking about severe psychological, narcissistic grooming, control, and abuse. So what is the definition of traumatic cognitive dissonance? Traumatic cognitive dissonance, or TCD, is a state of severe psychological fragmentation that occurs when an individual is narcissistically groomed to reconcile two irreconcilable realities. One, that a source of essential security, a caregiver, an institution, or a governing body, is two, simultaneously a source of significant harm. So you see where this is going. What happens is the elites who, the printers of the money, the runners of the government, the leaders of the military, those who are in charge of the information, they present themselves as your parents, as a caregiver, as an authority, and that they are necessary for your survival. And when it becomes apparent that what they're doing is harmful to you, but at the same time you are of the belief that without them you will die, you are now in a state of traumatic cognitive dissonance. But this doesn't happen overnight. This is a lifetime of grooming, and it is extremely toxic. It is extremely, extremely abusive. And the end result is that you become incapable of taking any action for yourself, thinking critically, and most importantly, you become immobilized. So I've told you that the four things that the elites do, number one is they seek to get you enraged, which is your self-protective mechanism. They do this on purpose. They want to get you angry so that you pick a side. Then they confuse you. They change the rules on you, and you don't know which political party you're supposed to be a part of. In fact, in my lifetime, I've switched political parties numerous times, and I look in hindsight, I realize this was done on purpose. So they confuse you. Number three, they frighten you. It becomes apparent that if you go against the commands, the narrative, the group consensus that you could lose your life, your freedom, your resources, your ability to function, your reputation. And then, so they frighten you. And then number 4, which is what we're going to talk about today, they immobilize you. They make you incapable of thinking clearly, incapable of taking any actions. They make it incapable for you to live your own life, be your own person. And that is what traumatic cognitive dissonance is all about. And it is a science. They have mastered it. And as I said in the beginning, the bottom line is they hijack your nervous system so that you can't even protect yourself. So let's continue with the definition here. So TCD creates a biological logjam in the nervous system because the brain's survival instinct commands the individual to attach to their abusive protector, while simultaneously their nervous system identifies that protector as a direct threat to their individuality and physical survival. The mind resolves the conflict by distorting its own critical thinking faculties. This results in a state of continuous traumatic, ordered confusion, where the victim's reality is distorted to maintain the attachment to the abusive authority figure. So this is typical narcissistic abuse, where the narcissist first makes a strong bond. If you're a parent, it's clear where that bond comes from. People talk about trauma bonds in relationships. That's what that means. That's what love bombing is. A narcissist is bombing the person's nervous system in their weakest point, their most childish wound, so that they can replace the parent and make the person. That's why they feel, oh my God, I've known you my whole life. You're the best person, because the narcissist is very expertly knowing exactly what buttons to push that you didn't get in childhood. So you feel like you have to have this person the same way an infant needs a parent to survive, but you sexualize it or you romanticize it and you think it's love when it's not. And then what happens is, once they've got that, this is the love bombing, creating the trauma bond, they remove the love and they begin the abuse. And once the abuse has gotten to the point where they've almost lost you, they come back and they love bomb you again, recreate the trauma bond. So they call this intermittent reinforcement. What it does is it sequentially removes the nervous system's ability to protect itself, to understand threats, and to make decisions for itself. And the reward system in the brain of the dopamine and the oxytocin and everything else, it's masterfully gets released so that you will bond stronger. And then the trauma comes, which is they remove the love or they bring back the abuse, which then makes you addicted and you want the love. You'll do whatever you have to do to get it from them. They give you just enough to bond you. Intermittent reinforcement. It's extremely traumatic, and this is what the elites do. It's done on an incredibly sophisticated level, and it's done on a worldwide scale. So we've got an entire world population now that is under this, and we're going through this revolution now of conscious awakening, and all this is you are waking up from the traumatic abuse. And part of that is realizing the truth, realizing the lies. And this is going to continue in this year. So, so that is the definition of traumatic cognitive dissonance. So, how the elites use TCD to control you. Symptoms. Phase 1. So remember, our world society is getting increasingly more toxic and psychologically damaged. I know that. I've been on this planet for 62 years and I see it. And so the longer you've been on the planet, you can attest, you've seen the population become more and more traumatized. As each younger generation comes into this world, they become more and more damaged, abused, and controlled, and pulled into the narrative. You see it. I know you do. But it's still possible to have some kind of semblance of healthy relationships within family. You could have families that love each other, but the whole family can be in an overall system of toxic cognitive dissonance, mind control. So now what's happening is that on a collective level, human beings are beginning to wake up. This is what my channel is all about. I'll get into that in some later videos. Let's keep going. So this is phase one, how the elites use TCD to control you. Number one, persistent confusion, a constant feeling of brain fog. Number two, somatic anxiety. The body begins to register a threat and you end up having non-specific anxiety. This is why when I turn on my YouTube on the smart TV, which by the way is listening to everything I say, and then coming up with ads to give me based on it. This is why my smart TV is continuously giving ads for all kinds of psychological. I mean, there's a new drug out there that is now, if your depression drugs don't work, they have a new one that you can add to it, sort of like a boombox, enhancer. It increases the sound and somehow that's going to make you feel better. There's some horrible side effects, like death and, irreversible tics that will never stop and all kinds of other things. But hey, you won't be depressed anymore. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about an entire society that has become so traumatized, it's become systematized into our reality. So this is what this non-specific anxiety is. It's because of traumatic cognitive dissonance. Number three, information overload, a feeling of being overwhelmed by contradictory data, leading to just be told what to do. So at some point, this is the beginnings of becoming immobilized. You just want somebody to tell you where to go and what to do. Do you know people like that? I know people like that. All right. Phase two, fragmentation. Number one, compartmentalization. The brain begins to wall off the harmful truth from the required narrative just to function. When it comes to the, right? Remember what they were saying in the beginning about how this was necessary, and if you didn't do this, you were, a health threat to your loved ones, et cetera, et cetera. And now we know that the didn't work. I mean, that's not getting into all the other stuff, but at the very least, it didn't work. And my thought is, where is the outrage? Well, there isn't any outrage. The people who got multiple and realized it didn't do anything, it didn't solve anything, it didn't prevent anything, didn't protect them in any way, they don't care. It's just, that's the past. They don't want to talk about it. That's this, the compartmentalization. They're walling off the harmful truth from the required narrative just to function. So it shows you that they still will do whatever they're told, even if that turns out to be destructive or untrue or ineffective or whatever. And once they come to that realization, it's swept under the rug. It's compartmentalized. I just want to get along, and that's the past. Everything's going to be okay. Number two, memory gaps, dissociation, forgetting specific instances of deception or harm because acknowledging them is intolerable. The same thing, right? They don't want to remember that it didn't work. They don't want to remember some other horrible things that happened as a result of it because it's too intolerable. If they were to face that, these two contrary truths, it would be intolerable. The pain would be overwhelming. And of course, it would mean their destruction in their own mind because it would mean they would have to reject their authority figure that's loving them. So number three is the gaslighting acceptance, which is basically what I just said. Doubting one's own intuition, you begin to say, maybe I'm not smart enough to comprehend this. We'll just let the experts figure it out. This happens in religion all the time. In fact, this is one of the main things that it happens in Christianity. They'll say God's wisdom is not our wisdom. We shouldn't try and understand God. What they mean by that is, if we were to apply the same standards that we use on each other, and we were to apply that to the biblical God, we would realize that God is a narcissist. So God can't be a narcissist. God is the source of good. So we just can't understand. The ways of God are beyond our understanding, and we shouldn't look into it. We shouldn't try and figure it out. That's the gaslighting acceptance. Phase 3, Stockholm Syndrome. To resolve the agony of the dissonance, the victim identifies with the abuser to integrate with the group. So this happens a lot. I forget the woman's name. It was an elite woman who was taken captive. Some of you will remember her name. She actually went and ended up robbing banks with these guys, and she was what was her name? Anyway, this was in the 70s. But Stockholm Syndrome, eventually, once you realize you're not getting out, you're never getting out, and once you realize that your life depends on getting your abusers, your captors, to love you and identify with you, you then tribalize yourself and become part of that group. And you seek to get their love and approval by changing your identity to the one they want you to have, so that they will feel safe. They'll take you into their group, and then you are now one of them. This happens. It happens a lot. It happened a lot, way back in the 1800s when the Europeans were moving across what's now the United States, and if natives would raid and take slaves, they might take, young children. And those children would then, they're young enough that they would integrate with the tribe. And by the time they were adults, they would be fully integrated. And when they would be liberated, white Americans would go and liberate them, they would run away and they would try and go back into their tribe because they were fully integrated. So that's an understandable one, but that is exactly what's happening here as well. We humans, of them. They integrate into the tribe of the abusers, and they identify with them so much that, there's no talking them. There's no talking sense to them. There's no showing reality to them. You've seen this with religious people. There's just no truth that you can show them that they're willing to even look at, because it means they got to give up their identity to look at the truth. So that's the Stockholm Syndrome. Number 2, spiritualizing the lie. This is phase 3. Defending the false narrative with intense anger. At this stage, the victim views truth seekers as dangerous conspiracy theorists. Where do you think that term came from? By the way, there's I'm not going to get off on that tangent. Anyway, so spiritualizing the lie. So in other words, if you don't agree with them, it's not okay. You don't have the right to have your own opinion. You don't have the right to disagree. And worst of all, you don't have the right to be wrong. You have to be correct in their eyes, or you are going to be ostracized. You're going to be put in jail. You're going to be attacked. You're going to be, they're going to come at you with everything they have, depending on who they are. So this is spiritualizing the lie. Number 3, learned helplessness of phase 3. Number 3, the victim adopts the belief that nothing will save them, leading to a total shutdown of the fight response. So they give up. And I know you've seen it. I've seen it with people who are so entrained into the narrative, but they've just given up on life. And they don't have any, they don't have any aspirations. They don't have any motivation to do anything, to be anything. They just follow, whatever they're told. They get into really destructive habits and routines, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, video game addiction, other kinds of addictions, social media. You just give up on yourself, and it's all about connecting and being approved by the narrative. All right, so that's phase 3. And here we have phase 4, which is the final phase of submission. Threat blindness. The amygdala hijack becomes permanent. So your brain chemistry, your brain itself, completely, totally is now fused with the narrative. And your cognitive, your ability to think clearly, your critical thinking skills are now completely destroyed. You don't have any. This is why you can hear people who are part of the narrative and they contradict themselves in the same sentence. When you give them facts, ask them, really pointed, truthful questions, they just bog down, completely bogged down. So that is the threat blindness. The brain is incapable of identifying threats to one's individual survival. Second part of phase 4 is the reflexive compliance. The ability to refuse coercion is gone. The individual automatically agrees with any directive from authority. And number 3 of phase 4, total ego eradication. The individual no longer has a self to protect. They have become a biological and psychological extension of the narrative. They are now part of the hive mind collective. So that is the end stage. That is the goal. That is what they want. And they're very good at making it happen because our survival instincts are very strong. It takes a tremendous amount of will to overcome an inaccurate survival instinct within us. I talk about this all the time. If you want to know what consciousness is, if you want to know what enlightenment is, it's this. It's the ability to take conscious, constructive action regardless of your feelings and your impulses and your instincts even. You have to be able to take conscious, constructive action even though your body's telling you it will kill you. This is the biggest thing that I work with clients and with students. You've heard me on this channel. If you've been on this channel any length of time, people always ask the same question. And what they're talking about is they're talking about that they suffer from this traumatic cognitive dissonance because they say they know that they need to take action. They know that they need to act bravely. And they know that they need to do something. And so they'll even say this. They'll say things like, I'm lazy, which is not what's going on. And they'll say, I know I need to take action in my life. I just don't have the motivation. I don't know how. And so they watch all kinds of videos learning how to get motivation, and it's nonsense. It might work for a week or two, and then it's going to stop working again. Because what's happened is that you've shut down. In order to fit in order to survive. Your survival mechanisms have kicked in and told you to just stop and to shut down. So when people say to me, as they always do, they say, how can I get over my fear? And I always respond the same way. I say, when did I ever tell you you were supposed to get over any emotion? My ancestors had a motto. The Norse, they said, those who die in battle go to Valhalla. That doesn't mean those that get stuck in the eye with a knife go to Valhalla. It means that those who are willing to take action for what they truly want, even though it may mean their demise, even if it kills them, they don't let anything stop them. Those are the people who achieve success. And this is a spirit, it's very literal. Valhalla is not just out there, Valhalla is here. It's heaven. It is enlightenment. It is spiritual awakening. So we could say those who are willing to die to achieve their spiritual authority, they will achieve enlightenment. Enlightenment is not a drug that hits you and then you just float around for the rest of your life without any problems. That doesn't exist. I'm here to tell you those people don't exist. Anybody who says that they are that, they are liars and or deluded or both. And any spiritual character, mythological, religious, or otherwise, that's presented as being without sin and without fault and without problems, that is a completely made up individual. And I'm going to make a video about that. This has to do with something, we'll get into it, but that doesn't exist. That is a perfect example that's designed to keep you from ever achieving it. They give you something that can't ever happen, that can never happen in the third dimension. There is no such thing as a person who has no problems, no fears, no pains, that never makes mistakes. That person doesn't exist. Never has. All right, so that's the total ego eradication. The individual no longer has a self to protect. They have become a biological, physical, and psychological extension of the narrative. So they're now a walking part of the narrative. What do you think AI is? What do you think AI is? The billionaires that are literally openly talking about putting chips in your head so that AI can tell you what to do. And that you don't have to think for yourself. This is already happening. I mean, kids go to school, they don't think, they have to do a book report on whatever, and they just have AI do the book report for them. They have AI do everything for them. And this is what we're talking about. You've become a biological, you've been fused. You're part of the Borg. I mean, the Borg, remember the Borg from Star Trek? The Next Generation, way back in the 80s? That's the Borg. AI is the Borg. And human beings being hooked up to it. That's where it's going. This is transhumanism. It's here. But first they got to get to you psychologically. Then you will willingly walk in and ask to be plugged into the matrix. All right. So phase 5, voluntary slavery. The product. So this is the end result. The end result of all of this is that you are the perfect voluntary slave. At the end of this narcissistic grooming, which is what it is, the subject is in a state of psychological paralysis. They will do, say, or think whatever they are suggested to do, and they will fight to the death with anyone or anything that contradicts the will of the narrative and its leaders. This is the end result. Now, this sounds preposterous because it is. It is impossible, which is why it's not working, which is why it's crumbling. This is, again, the people behind this, the elites, are narcissists. Narcissists are mentally ill people. They suffer from psychological syndromes. They are not in connection to any kind of objective reality. What a narcissist does, a narcissist wants to impose their internal, distorted, false, ego-driven fantasies into external reality. The codependent, which is the flip side, codependence is narcissism. Anybody out there that takes pride in calling themselves an empath, I have bad news for you. It means that you are a codependent. You are a chronic, toxic codependent. And you have bought into this. You have become the flip side of the narcissist. You are their victim. That's why empaths continuously talk about being abused by narcissists, because that is their addiction. That is their narcissism. And so for this to work, there has to be the abusers and there has to be the victims. And the victims are willing. They're voluntary victims. It doesn't mean that it's easy to walk away from it, but you're still choosing to do it. And that's what we're talking about here. The perfect, we're talking about where did I go? Talking about the perfect voluntary slave. And so, anyway, we could go on and on. So, I got this test online. Let's see what it is. I'm going to be looking at this with you for the first time also. So let's take a test and see how badly are you affected by traumatic cognitive dissonance. Don't take this test too seriously, because I'm going to tell you exactly how to heal yourself from it, no matter how badly you've been affected. All right, is this where we are? Okay. Ask yourself the following questions. Answer with a simple yes or no based on your gut reaction, not your rationalization. Level 1, the disorientation check. The sensory gap. Do you often feel a physical knot in your stomach when you hear an official narrative that contradicts what you see with your own eyes? I don't know. That doesn't strike me as being. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Let's see, the memory blur. Do you find it difficult to remember what the rules or facts were just 6 months ago, even though you feel you should know them? That's pretty good, because the narrative keeps changing itself and changing the rules. Remember this? Remember that? And that's now, we don't worry about that anymore. And people have forgotten about that, and I could go on and on. Other things that happen in the media, that happen in the news, what the government does from one day to the next is continuously changing, and it's like in 1984. I don't remember which one it is. It's either the East Asians or the whoever it was. The enemies keep changing, and all of a sudden, what was last week's enemy is now today's ally, and that's part of it. You like forget what they just said, and you just stay with whatever they're telling you right now. So, the memory blur. Do you find it difficult to remember what the rules or facts are just 6 months ago, even though you feel like you should know them? Level 2, the fragmentation check, the aggressive defense. Do you feel an immediate, intense flare of anger or cringe when somebody presents evidence that challenges an institution you rely on? That's actually a pretty good question to ask. So there's been some people who've responded to my most recent outrageous videos where I talk about, the ETs have told me who I was 13,000 years ago and who I am out there. And even though I make it clear in the videos, I say that if you communicate with ETs, they're going to tell you something even more grandiose, and you might be more powerful than I am. So even though you hear me talking about this like I'm turning myself into some kind of god, which I am, because we are all gods, I'm also saying that is true of you. But what's interesting is the people responding negatively, instinctively negatively, and calling me names and attacking. They're not attacking my sanity so much. Some people are saying, I think you've lost it, which is, I thought that too. But they start going, kind of, who do you think you are? And one person came at me and said I was like a travesty on all spiritual teachers, and it's like, wow, the personal attacks are coming at me. I haven't personally attacked anybody. In fact, all I've been saying is, if you do what I've done, you're going to find out that you are a god. And people have said, if I found out I was Jesus, I wouldn't tell anybody. And they say that with pride, like you would lie to people. If you found out you were Jesus, you would simply lie to people. Well, the anger behind that, the personal attacks that come from hearing me talk about my expansion is out of the narrative. So remember, part of the narrative is spiritual. And this isn't both, this is not only in Western religion, but Eastern religion, where you don't have any ego. People want to say this to me. They want to educate me on meditation, even though I've been teaching meditation for 40 plus years. They want to say meditation is about going within and going into the emptiness and becoming nothing. And that's only one type of meditation. They seem to have this religious attachment to this idea of becoming empty and nothing. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of types of meditation, and they're all designed to do different things. In fact, I had a teacher who is a devout Buddhist, And he would talk about mantra meditation. And he would say this. He would say, the people that are so addicted to this emptiness meditation and don't do mantra meditation, they really don't understand what meditation is. Now, I'm not going to unpack what he was trying to say, but the point is that wanting to deny yourself is what people are talking about. People abuse Western religion. They become self-righteous and judgmental. That's one side of it. Eastern religion gets distorted in the false humility where I am nothing and I just meditate to become. And so people are angry with me and getting offended and frightened and reactive when I say, when I go out into my meditations and I go into higher dimensions, I expand. The energy gets excited and intense, and I expand and I become something bigger than myself. And my ego and my identity becomes even more pronounced. And that is a threat, because part of the narrative is to become nothing, to see yourself as invaluable and small and little. And you spiritualize it by saying, I'm nothing, I have no ego. And the other side says, I'm a warrior for Jesus and the truth, and they get all bent out of shape in their self-righteousness. But it's the same thing. So, do you have an aggressive defense? Do you feel an immediate intense flare of anger when someone presents evidence that challenges an institution you rely on? Buddhism. The expert dependency. Do you find yourself waiting for official word before you feel safe forming an opinion on a personal life choice? That doesn't sound very likely. Level 3, the threat blindness check. The moral swap. Have you ever judged someone as unspiritual simply because they pointed out a logical flaw in a narrative you follow? For some reason I got onto the radar of some flat earthers. I don't know why. And so they keep coming on, and I just keep blocking them. And, one guy, the last one, came on and said I was a gatekeeper. Basically he's saying I'm part of the elite because I won't co-sign his belief in a flat earth. But that kind of thing where you just go to the extreme like that because somebody's challenging your belief. By the way, flat earth belief is a very good tool for the elites. It's a very good tool for the narrative. Because people who are flat earthers, a lot of them, not all of them, are born again or Bible thumpers, and they conflate flat earth with God. If you don't believe in flat earth, you're disobeying God. And again, religion is part of that same thing. There's many different tentacles to this thing. All right, so the compliance relief at the bottom. Do you feel a sense of calm or peace only after you have complied with a demand you initially felt was wrong or intrusive? I think these questions I don't relate to them. They're interesting, but I don't think this is I probably shouldn't have put the test in there, but I did it anyway. Let's keep going. Okay, so scoring the results. We're not going to waste our time with that. That's ridiculous. All right, so what is the cure? The traumatic cognitive dissonance cure. Number 1, be willing to accept uncomfortable truths. So I put up a video, the one thing that God wants you to ask or something like that. And I said, the question is, how can I selfishly make myself happy? And I really emphasized being selfish. And I used the law of one, which says that if you work towards being unselfish, giving to others, you're more spiritual. If you work towards self-satisfaction, you are less spiritual. And they put out the assumption that there's this binary choice that you can either be selfless and spiritual or selfish and non-spiritual. And that is an assumption, and it's absolutely 100% opposite. It's impossible to be selfish for your soul and be harmful to others, which was the assumption of the binary choice, which is if you work to satisfy yourself, you'll be harming other people. And in fact, the woman, the woman who was part of that book made this example. I heard her. heard an interview of her saying that if I have a peanut butter sandwich and I'm eating it, I could eat the whole thing, or I could split it in half and give somebody half of my sandwich, or I could give them all of my sandwich. And she went on to say, if I give somebody all of my sandwich, then I'm spiritual, and if I give somebody half of my sandwich, that the median was, you have to be like 1% more selfless than selfish. And that was the goal, to be more selfless than selfish. And it's complete, total, codependent nonsense. But it's part of what we were told. And so I asked people, how did it make you feel when I told you that God is asking you to ask the question, how can I selfishly fulfill my desires? Because that is true spirituality. True spirituality is fulfilling your soul's deepest desires. So, be willing to accept uncomfortable truths. Be willing to examine subjects you disagree with. If you're on my channel and you disagree with me, I'm okay with that. If people put comments and they're respectful, they can disagree. People say, I think you've lost it. One guy said some stuff and he was triggered, but he was respectful in it. And, I engaged with him a little bit, and eventually I stopped engaging with him because he thought it was his job to give me unsolicited advice. But it was coming from his discomfort. And he was uncomfortable with the things that I was saying. And so he wanted to come in and make himself my mentor without me asking him. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. Be willing to examine subjects you disagree with. So listen to what I'm saying. I don't expect people to agree with me. I don't expect you to agree with everything I say. I don't even expect myself to be correct about everything. I've been wrong, and I will be wrong. There's no doubt that I'm wrong about who knows how many things. Or I don't have complete knowledge. I might not be wrong, but I don't have complete knowledge or understanding, and that's just a given. And if you go back in my channel far enough, you will find videos where I say, I was wrong about. And whenever I'm wrong, I own up to it. And I don't delete the videos where I was wrong. If you go back far enough, you're going to hear me say completely contradictory things that I'm saying now. And I keep it up there because I want you to know that that's what humans are, that that's what you're supposed to be. And it's okay. It's okay to grow. It's okay to learn. So be willing. Look, it doesn't, just because somebody's presenting a subject that you don't agree with, but that you're uncomfortable with, it doesn't mean you have to accept it. Again, this is why people don't do that, because they've been trained that authority figures tell them what to believe, and if you don't accept 100% what they tell you, they're going to punish you. I'm not going to punish you. I don't even, look, just to give you an example, some people come on here and of course they don't know me, and they'll call me a fraud, or they'll call me a shyster, or they'll call me a grifter. That's the biggest weird one. I have never once sent out an email campaign asking people to subscribe or buy products. And I never will. I never will. I have always been here. I give you all of the links to, my services. I give I've had people come on here after hearing me say, if you go here, you can get this. And they go, why do spiritual teachers always demand that you pay them for knowledge? And I'm like, how much did you pay for this video? How many videos are on my channel? How much did you pay to do the live guided interdimensional meditation? How much did you pay to have access to the hundreds of interdimensional meditations that are recorded? It's just amazing the garbage that people will create to prevent themselves from getting what they need and what they want. All right, be willing to examine subjects you disagree with. Be willing to lose family or friends in the narrative. I have. You probably have as well, but I have. There are people that were good friends of mine, and I don't, I got to be honest, it was me. I couldn't tolerate listening to it. I couldn't. It was so destructive, and I just so I didn't make a stink. I just sort of backed away from that. So if you're going to follow your truth, be prepared to have people reject you, and or be willing to not be able to, connect with people on some important levels. Number 4, understand that experiencing anxiety as a result of rejecting the narrative is only a feeling. That's what I was saying earlier. Bear in mind, as I said, our ancestors knew this. So bear in mind, pre-Christian Europe was very different from post-Christian Europe. Pre-Christian Europe, as I said, those who die in battle go to Valhalla, meaning you can't go through life without dying to your ego multiple times. People knew that. It was part of their understanding. It was part of their life, and even in Western Europe, they did, what do you call those things? Vision quests. That wasn't just a Native American thing. It was also, my ancestors did that. They called it sitting out. And what it meant was you would go out into the wilderness and you would sit there until somebody came and talked to you, until you saw a light being or a god or something like that. You had some kind of experience which would reveal to you your truth, your soul destiny. That is not something that current narrative, they don't even mention it, but they would absolutely outlaw it. And that's where religion came through and wiped all that out and said that's of the devil. They did that for a reason, because you had to listen to what you were being told. My favorite thing that biblical pastors, born again Christian pastors say is, God's laws are not human laws. You can't figure out God's logic. Don't even bother. What is, I forget the words, what is insanity for humans is, truth for God, and vice versa. And that is part of this technique of controlling your mind so that you accept something is nuts, but you spiritualize it and you say, well, I don't know any better. I don't know what's going on. You know better than me. I'll do what my body is telling me is wrong. So understand that experiencing anxiety as a result of rejecting the narrative is only a feeling. When people say you have to control your mind, that is wrong. You can't control your mind. Your mind is a reactive organ. It reacts to old memories and old programming. So this is what people call intrusive thoughts, meaning a thought will come to them that has nothing to do with what's going on. That is the nervous system and the programming, just spewing out thoughts, trying to tell you what to do, how to feel. This is a big one. We are taught to feel crappy about ourselves all the time. I was just feeling it before I did this video, and I had to stop myself and say it's okay to be happy, because I had this feeling of happiness come over me, and my instinct was to swat that away and say, oh, no, you have to feel crappy. And I'm like, why do I need to feel crappy for? It's a fear that the rug's going to get pulled out from underneath you, so somehow you're protecting yourself by constantly being in a bad mood. That is a program. And it's okay to have a feeling. It's okay to have negative feelings. And so it's not about trying to talk yourself out of negative feelings. It's about acting yourself into right thinking. So be willing to, where am I? Did I get ahead of myself? No. Understand that experiencing anxiety as a result of rejecting the narrative is only a feeling. 5, take direct actions for your personal fulfillment. I've already talked about that. So, as I said, what is enlightenment is to consciously know what the constructive action is, and to take that action for yourself or for others despite your feelings. So people think enlightenment is getting to a place where you feel enlightened, and the assumption is that you're in this place and your happiness will make you feel good about everything that you do, so you'll never be in conflict. And that's just not reality. And the truth is the opposite, that in order to become enlightened, you are going to have to take actions that are sometimes directly contrary to your nervous system impulses that are screaming at you. If you don't pick up that beer and get drunk, you're going to die. If you don't put that needle in your neck, you're going to die. If you don't put that in you're going to die. If you don't get approval, you're going to die. If you don't have a good credit score, you're going to die. And so you have to be willing to do things even though your impulses are telling you that you're going to die if you do that thing. And your soul knows what it's supposed to do. So when you're in that state where your soul is telling you to do one thing and the programming is telling you to do something else, and it's making you feel like you want to off yourself, that's okay. It's just a feeling. You do the thing you know is healthy for you. I teach people how to do that. All right, healing options. Number 1, identify your soul desire. I have a book. You can now see it. The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. Go ahead and punch that into Amazon. It's a booklet, really. It's not even a book. If you can master that book, you will not only live your life, but you will achieve 5D if there is such a thing. Because that is exactly what we're talking about. How to live your truth in spite of whatever narrative is being shoved down your throat. That's what that book is really about. It's a booklet. It's really small. And people have a hard time identifying what their soul desire is because the programming is constantly destroying it. Their feelings are constantly fighting against their soul desire. So I also help people with that. If you want to know, if you want to have a session with me so that you can find out what your soul desire is, up until this point, I have never failed at helping people find what their soul desire is. Them doing it is a whole other thing because they have to overcome some uncomfortable feelings a lot of times. But if you give me an hour, I can usually figure it out. Sometimes, 15 minutes or half an hour later, we'll figure out what you're supposed to do. You're going to have to follow through. If you want that service, in the comments section, ask me how can I find my soul desire, and I'll tell you how to get a session with me. Number 2, meditation and energy work is a healing option, obviously, because meditation and energy work help you to connect to your nervous system. Now, I said in the past that there are people who do emptiness meditations, and it is true that there are people who meditate as a way of denial. They're trying to put themselves in a state of denial. They're trying to avoid their feelings. They use meditation to escape their feelings, to escape their fear and their anxiety. And that's not what meditation is about. Meditation has nothing to do with how you feel. Now, the truth is, if you do energy work, you usually feel pretty good. So meditation, by the way, meditation is something that's done after you do the energy work. So it's sort of like, I've got a protein drink here. It's sort of like saying if you drink protein drinks all day, you'll get big muscles. No, you have to work out first. Then you drink the protein drinks, and the protein then helps the body synthesize muscles. If all you're doing is meditating, it's like just drinking the protein drink. Sometimes it doesn't accomplish anything. I've met a lot of people who all they do is the emptiness meditations, and they're very boring, just kind of dead-eyed people. So what's really meant to happen is that you do energy work, whether it's yoga, whether it's qigong, whether it's tai chi, whatever it is. The stuff that I teach here is that kind of energy work. Once you've done that, then you meditate. It's a whole different deal when you do that and then meditate. So, this came about because the reason why there's a yoga studio in every studio, and the yoga studios have nothing to do with traditional yoga. They're just people stretching, and if you're lucky, they might say Om for half a second afterwards. But has nothing to do with yoga. Yoga. What happened is that a bunch of Westerners went over to India, 100 years ago, wanting to learn yoga, and yoga means union. So they were really looking for spiritual union with the divine, and so they'd go around, where's the yogi? We want to learn yoga. So they went to these yogis who saw these Westerners who, their energy bodies were horrible, and they said, oh, okay, well, you have to do hatha yoga, the stretching. And then what was meant to happen is after you've done hatha yoga for a while, then the body is balanced and the meridians are opened and balanced. Then you learn the mantras. Then you learn the meditations. And then by the end, you're not doing hatha yoga anymore. Real yogis, they don't do hatha yoga. They don't spend their whole life doing hatha yoga. Hatha yoga was the entryway. And so that's what we got now, a bunch of people who are preparing the nervous system. And the idea was that you do the yoga so that your body will be able to handle the power of the meditation. And that's what the meditation was for. You can't just go straight into meditation without doing the energy work and get that level of awakening and enlightenment. It's one of the reasons why the ETs are able to take me to such incredible places astrally, because I spent decades doing these energy practices, and it opened up my meridians to the point where I could handle their energy. So if you do these things, you'll be able to handle the ET's energy a lot better. So another thing you can do is interdimensional meditation. We do those twice a week on the channel. Every Wednesday and Saturday, we do the live guided interdimensional meditation. And right now we're doing it 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but that's because I'm in California. When I go back to the East Coast, I'll do it at a different time. But you can go to the live section on the YouTube channel and just simply listen to any of them. Go back a year, 2 years, and listen to them. They're all different, and these will help you to direct connection to higher dimensional beings, extraterrestrials. This is one of the things that will give you direct, powerful, and sometimes instantaneous relief from the cognitive dissonance. So I'm going to make a video about that coming up. Whoops, where am I? At the cure. All right, eliminate all mind-altering chemicals. I already talked about that. Mind-altering chemicals, I don't care. You can justify it all you want. And listen, I've done them. So, I grew up in the 70s. That's what we did. So it's not that I don't understand why you do them or what they're about, or, it's that the DMT that is released in my brain is far more intense than anything that can be done externally. If you do external, and now forget about the obvious things like, by the way, THC is horrible for you. Stop doing it. Obviously, alcohol and hard drugs, all those things, ketamine, all this stuff is horrible for you. Stop doing it. It's not helping you. But even the so-called plant teachers, these things, that's an old system. That's before the shift. That's what people needed to do before. What we're experiencing now was the shift. Now that we're going through the shift and the sun and the earth are raising our frequency to a level far beyond anything we've had before, we have direct connection to higher dimensions. The third dimension is being deleted, so we're not trapped in 3D anymore. The power plants were to give you the ability to break through the third dimension. We don't need that anymore. You can communicate directly with ETs and higher dimensional beings, and DMT will be naturally released. So do it naturally, because if you do it artificially, you're reducing your body's ability to naturally create it. The stuff that I teach will give you the ability to do that, to do it naturally and more intense than anything you can artificially do. So eliminate all mind-altering chemicals. Number 6, rinse and repeat. Do all these. I'll leave this up here. Take a screenshot, write it down, go through this, and this will cure you if you do any or all of these things. Also work with teachers. A broken mind can't fix itself. So people who say, I'm going to go do shadow work, or I'm going to go work on myself. That's you're taking a broken brain and trying to fix your broken brain with a broken brain. You have to have the tools. You have to have somebody who's objective. You're not objective. Nobody's objective about themselves. You have to have somebody who's objective, who will tell you the truth, tell you things you don't want to hear. So I recommend you find a teacher, you find a mentor, find a group. 12-step groups are great, probably the most healing thing, and almost everybody listening to me qualifies for some 12-step group. You can go onto my channel. I've got a playlist called 12 Steps to 5D, and you can work with me personally. This is the most powerful way for you to heal. There's people on here who will say that I am their teacher, who almost never work with me. Sometimes there's people who work with me once or twice and they call me their teacher. You have to actually work with me for me to actually be your teacher. You have to take suggestions, follow instructions. So if you want to, ask in the comments how you can be an apprentice or work with me, or go to thunderwizard.com and look for those in the membership section. All right, so that's it, my friends. This was a long video. I hope it was helpful for you. This is how they hijack your nervous system, how we overcome traumatic cognitive dissonance, which is what the elites use to control you. That's it, my friends. I love you all. Please be very good to yourselves. I will see you all very soon.